I'd like to call the high-speed rail meeting to order. We have a full day. I apologize for starting a little late. First item before us, would you all please stand and join with us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now is time for public comment. If I may, I know there are a number of fine elected officials who are here. Not to show any deference to their comments, but deference to their office. I'd like to invite them up first. So let me see here. If I may, Mr. Supervisor Rubio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and distinguished members of the Commission. I stand before you today specifically on item 8. Which I think many of the elected officials, we have a great delegation from the Valley, reaching from the southernmost part to the northernmost part, to lend our support and show how serious we are about getting the San Joaquin Valley portion of the high-speed rail built. In making my statements, I will be brief, and I'll simply say that when we go for this pot of money, the $8 billion that will be awarded to this nation, we ask that you don't forget that without the Valley, the high-speed rail in the entire state just simply does not work. And I'd even go so far to say that when you submit the applications, even consider establishing priorities. I know that would be extremely controversial and be difficult to do with all the interest in this room and throughout the state, but I would even argue when you look at just on the merit of the projects that none will surpass where we are in terms of position to receive the funding, considering the guidelines and the standards that have been set forth, but also the social and justice impacts that it will have on a particular region because of the jobs and the economic stimulus that it will provide. So I know you'll do the right thing. I want to thank you for your leadership and hard work.
Thank you very much. Actually, Supervisor, you call on us to set priorities, and I think that's a very good idea. So speaking on behalf of the entire Valley, have you set priorities?
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman, I thank you for asking that question. The priority would be from Bakersfield to Merced, and I would even argue if you drill down further, that money is going to be difficult because it's spread thin when you take the $8 billion through the entire nation.
Well, that section is tentatively valued with very limited access at stations at about $7 billion. So, so tell me what you are seeking with that comment.
I was just going to say that if you drill down further, realizing we don't have all the money to build all these projects, if you look to Bakersfield to Fresno, that project, when compared to every other project in the state, I argue is in the best position to receive our funding and is in the best position to be built the quickest compared to any other project in the state.
Thank you. That was bold, but very much appreciated.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. If I may also invite Supervisor Perea. There you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Pringle, for the opportunity to speak to you all and members of the Commission. At the last meeting, didn't have a chance to speak, but because I was late. But I just want to congratulate you on your appointment, and I think it's a lot of exciting times now in front of us of the fact that we have money that will be coming, and the reality of a high-speed bullet train is real for California. Just standing here before you to let you know that myself and Supervisor Anderson from the county have been appointed to work on this task for Fresno County, and we are working now closely with the city of Fresno to one, obviously get the share of the pie for the San Joaquin Valley, because we all win when this project is completed. But certainly, as a representative of Fresno County working with the city, we're very interested, obviously, in the high-speed maintenance and operations facility, as well as the depot. And we're working together, and you're going to see a very active, coordinated effort through our COG in this effort, working towards and working with you in this effort. So I just wanted to make the introduction, let you know we're excited about what you're doing, and thank you for all the hard work you're putting into this effort.
Thank you, Supervisor. I know you're doing a good job reporting back what we do here because my pal, Supervisor Puchigian, has reported on your reports.
Understood. Thank you.
And may I ask the Mayor Gamboa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm back, as you notice. Again, I want to support the comments that have been made before me. You have heard my comments many times, but I think this time in particular, I just want to point out that there's some reference made in some of the literature about doing some work in the Burlington Northern track, and I just want to just caution the board to not make that decision until we know what decision we're going to make with the Visalia location. I think that once we go down the road of spending money on that on the Burlington Northern alignment, then I'm concerned that we'll forget about finishing the decision on the Union Pacific alignment. So that's one caution. And then again, I've heard many times the governor and others say in the last few months about building California, and I think that the Central Valley is part of California, and I just hope that and I know we have a difficult decision to on how we allocate the $8 billion, but I just hope that the Bakersfield to Fresno or Fresno to Merced alignments to get some part of that money and not forget about us. Too often the Central Valley is forgotten, and I hope that this board doesn't fall into that as well. So I just wanted to again come and support my colleagues and also just follow the process. So thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor and Ms. Flores, make sure that no one here will ever forget the Valley. Mayor Swearingen.
Good morning. Mr. Chair, members of the Authority Board, I'm Ashley Swearingen. I'm Mayor of the City of Fresno, and appreciate all of you and the hard work that you're doing. I want to start by, first of all, thanking the staff for the really incredible work they've been doing over the last 30 days. I happen to know from firsthand experience that there are mayors throughout the Valley yanking their chains and bugging them all the time to make sure that Fresno and the Valley are included in this particular application. So a special thank you to Mehdi and Carrie Paravahidi and Carrie Bowen. We want you to know from the City of Fresno that we support your efforts, the things that you're working on to make sure that the state receives as much of the ARRA money as possible. And I know that it is a complicated puzzle that you have to put together, a puzzle that both meets the federal requirements for these dollars. But what I urge you to consider today, that as you put this puzzle together, consider the pledge that was made to the voters and consider the goals and the ambitions of the bond that was passed just last year. And as this puzzle comes together, our hope and our encouragement is that it would come together in such a way that it does not adversely impact the commitment that was made to the voters to deliver a high-speed train system to California. And that vision that the voters approved calls for travel times in the amount of 2 hours and 38 minutes from LA to San Francisco, an hour and 43 minutes from Fresno to Anaheim, an hour and 15 minutes from Merced to San Francisco. Now, these travel times are made possible by train speeds that travel at 220 miles per hour, and those speeds can only be attained in the San Joaquin Valley. As you've heard from my colleagues, we are urging full consideration of the Valley and what we bring to the entire high-speed train system. Now, we know from the high-speed train business plan that the short distances in the LA Basin and the San Francisco corridor simply can't bring the types of fares that are required to support those systems. We have to use the Valley to connect those two corridors to make the entire system work. The recommendation that you have before you from the staff is something that the City of Fresno supports. We know that there are 2 pieces that are included in the San Joaquin Valley, total of $2.2 billion. We urge your support for the $2.2 billion, and we certainly hope that both corridors are included in the final analysis. At the end of the day, the Valley Corridor must be built concurrently with other parts of the system. Thank you, and we pledge to continue working with you over the coming weeks as the final decisions are made.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now I have 3 other cards of folks. Mr. Spriggs.
Mr. Chairman and Board, I'm Bill Spriggs. I'm a member of the Merced City Council and also a member of the San Joaquin Valley Policy Council, which is chaired by Mr. Rubio ably. We have an emphasis on transportation issues in the San Joaquin Valley. San Joaquin Valley is the fastest growing area in California. Over the last few years, we've seen a 150% increase in vehicle miles traveled in the valley. We are the backbone of California. We are the connector. As Mayor Swearingen said, without the valley, high-speed rail is not high-speed rail. And we just want to let you know that we support the recommendation of the staff for the $2.5 billion for the valley in the AHSRA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cahill.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. I'm Bill Cahill, Assistant City Manager of the City of Merced. Also representing here today the Greater Merced High-Speed Rail Committee, which is a partnership in our region of the City of Merced, County of Merced, additional cities in Merced County, the private sector, and the University of California at Merced. We've banded together to try to develop a way to be more helpful to you in the implementation of the high-speed rail project. I'll simply extend some of the comments that you've heard earlier in support of the staff recommendation for the full possible funding for the valley. We appreciate that this authority is charged with picking an alternative that will be the most competitive in competing for ARA dollars. While driving home from work the other day, I heard a radio story in which the governor of Florida was quite confident that Florida would win a significant share of the ARA dollars. The mayor of Vancouver, British Columbia, was doing a joint event with the mayor of Portland, Oregon, Sam Adams, expressing confidence that the Northwest would win significant shares of planning money in that area. We appreciate this competition is going to be very stiff and that you will need to do your best to represent the state of California. At our end, we will pledge to you that we will give all the support that we can to the application as it goes to Washington, D.C., including work with our congressional delegation, and we'll stand in support of what the authority does in submission of the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And the final card I have is from Mr. Andrew Schwartz.
Mr. Chair, members of the authority, I'm Andrew Schwartz from the law firm Shute, Mahaly, and Weinberger. I represent the Trans-Bay Joint Powers Authority. I wanted to speak on item 8, and I'm not a public official. I wonder if I could
This is a good time.
All right. My comments concern the application for ARA funds that was submitted by the governor on August 24th. $400 million of that application was for the Trans-Bay Joint Powers Authority Trans-Bay Transit Center train box, which is the Northern California terminus for high-speed rail. And the Trans-Bay Transit Center is a shovel-ready project, so it has an excellent chance of qualifying for ARA federal stimulus funds. It is scheduled to begin construction in the first quarter of 2010. It has come to our attention that the Art Gensler Architects has submitted a proposal for a so-called alternative location for the Northern California terminus of high-speed rail in San Francisco, the so-called Beale Street alternative, which is at a different location than the Trans-Bay Transit Center. And it's also our understanding that the staff of the authority is in the process of environmental review for the project-specific EIR for the San Francisco to San Jose corridor, is actually considering this so-called alternative location for the San Francisco station for high-speed rail. The problem with this is that that alternative was already studied thoroughly in the EIR and EIS for the Trans-Bay Transit Center in 2004 and rejected as infeasible. It is also legally infeasible. Of course, the authority needs to study any legally feasible alternatives for a station location. But in this case, the voters, the legislature, have made an emphatic and clear statement that the Trans-Bay Transit Center is the San Francisco station for high-speed rail. The problem with the issue is that the FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration, is going to be making a decision about Track 1 funds for the application the governor submitted on August 24 on October 2nd. And there isn't much time left for FRA to make up its mind about how to allocate these funds. And this is an opportunity for the state to obtain $400 million for a part of the high-speed rail system that unfortunately could be lost if it is not clear to the FRA that the Trans-Bay Transit Center is shovel-ready. And I think that it's our understanding that the FRA will place greatest weight on projects that are ready to be built, that are going to create jobs in the short term, and the Trans-Bay Transit Center will create, in the short term, more than 40,000 jobs. So the Transit Center is, as I mentioned, is the only legally feasible alternative for the San Francisco station for high-speed rail. In Proposition H, the voters of San Francisco in 1999 said that a new or rebuilt terminal shall be constructed on the present site of the Trans-Bay Transit Center terminal. In Public Resources Code Section 5027.1, the legislature stated that it hereby approves demolition of the Trans-Bay Terminal building at 1st and Mission Streets in the city and county of San Francisco, including its associated vehicle ramps, for construction of a new terminal at the same location, designed to serve Caltrain, and I'll skip a couple of words, and designed to accommodate high-speed passenger rail service. And then in Regional Measure 2 in March of 2004, the voters of the Bay Area stated that a new Trans-Bay terminal in San Francisco connecting regional transit with future high-speed rail, and specifying that the new terminal must be located on the site of the existing Trans-Bay terminal at 1st and Mission Streets in San Francisco. And finally, in Proposition 1A in 2008, the voters of California mandated, it is the intent of the legislature by enacting this chapter and the people of California by approving Proposition 1A to initiate the construction of a high-speed train system that connects the San Francisco Trans-Bay Terminal to Los Angeles Union Station in Anaheim. So the train box that's proposed under the Transit Center at 1st and Mission is the only legal alternative for the station. Your attorneys at the Attorney General's office are excellent lawyers. We have the highest regard for them. They are studying this issue. Had a conversation with the Deputy Attorney General yesterday about this. We urge the Attorney General to decide immediately, before it's too late, that the Trans-Bay Transit Center train box is the only location for the Northern California terminus for high-speed rail. And we also urge this commission to send a letter to FRA stating that the only location for the San Francisco station that's being studied is the Trans-Bay Transit Center. Otherwise, I think FRA may already be making its decision. Otherwise, California is in jeopardy of losing $400 million on a project that I think has an excellent chance of qualifying for these funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz.
Chairman.
Mr. Cobb.
Isn't it true that the Federal Railroad Administration informed the Trans-Bay Terminal Authority, Joint Powers Authority, that such item was not eligible for funding under the ARRA?
No, that's not correct.
Do you have a copy of the minutes of that meeting about a month ago?
I think the Commissioner's referring to a statement that the FRA staff was considering an issue that would disqualify the Trans-Bay Transit Center for FRA funds, but I think that that issue's been resolved and that the Trans-Bay Transit Center clearly qualifies for the Track 1 funds.
Well, if you don't have those minutes, I'll make them available to you. Second question is it your contention legally that the Joint Powers Authority controls the decision-making process of the California High-Speed Rail Authority?
Not at all, Commissioner. This is my comments go to the environmental review process where under NEPA and CEQA, the High-Speed Rail Authority is required to study feasible alternatives. In this case, if there is no legally feasible alternative, then the High-Speed Rail Authority should instruct its consultants not to study an alternative location.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those are all the cards that I have notifying of public comment. Now, some people scribble out a piece of paper. Is that
that would
your
be me.
scribbling, Mr. Cruz?
The clerk indicated that you were out of speaker cards and asked
No
me.
way. We only have 4 speaker cards?
She asked me to put it on a piece of paper.
Then this qualifies. That's great. Yes, sir.
My name is Emilio Cruz. I'm here representing the Trans-Bay Joint Powers Authority and wanted to speak on the San Jose to Silicon Valley corridor. Just wanted to bring to the attention of you as commissioners that the Metropolitan Transportation Commission of the Bay Area did lead an effort to set priorities for the High-Speed Rail Authority corridor as it related to ARRA funding. That report is available on the MTC website, and the participants in that report were the San Francisco County Transportation Authority, the City of San Jose, the Caltrain Joint Powers Board, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, the Trans-Bay Joint Powers Authority, and the Santa Clara Valley Transportation Authority. We collectively got together to set the priorities for that corridor. Your Executive Director, Mr. Mehdi Morshed, attended many of those meetings, though indicated that the authority was not in a position to be part of the preparatory signature to the document. And I simply wanted to state that as a corridor, we identified a series of projects, and while I know under ARRA local match is not an issue, but we do have 45% local match against the ask that we are making for the corridor itself. So the total corridor investment would be approximately $3 billion, with 45% of that coming from local match, either from the Trans-Bay Joint Powers Authority or the local transportation authorities. If the corridor were to move forward, we anticipate it would generate 101,000 jobs for the region, and more importantly, those jobs would actually begin in the coming year. Because as Mr. Schwartz said, the Trans-Bay project is shovel-ready, has full CEQA and full NEPA clearance, is in final design, and will be ready to set its first construction contract in 2010. So I simply want to urge, I know that you have a full agenda. I know that every region is fighting for its own share of the pot in order to make sure that we all have jobs coming to California. I echo the comments from other officials that it is important that California receive its largest share. I hope that you look positively on the corridor between San Jose and San Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Anyone else? I don't see any other cards or notes or scratches for public comment. Yes, Ms. Shank.
It's on. The mayor of San Diego, Jerry Sanders, will be here shortly and will address us with your leave when he gets here.
And we'll be really excited about that.
Good, thank you.
Without objection, I'd like to defer items 3, 4, and 5 to address a few of the action items on our agenda. Mr. Morshed, did you need to make any comments on the executive report until the end? All right, so the next item before us is item 6. Commission members, I have provided in my early attempts at trying to assist the flow of these board meetings a few suggested modifications, and I wanted to bring them before you in terms of the procedure for minutes, the procedure for meeting compensation, and the acceptance of a consent calendar. Very good. Motion by Mr. Katz, second by Mr. Kopp. Any discussion on these items? Before we take this vote, I have failed to announce who this is, and this is a representation of a complete membership of our committee, and Commission member Tom Umberg is with us on a phone call. A couple weeks ago, and Mr. Umberg may want to share, Mr. Umberg is a reservist in the Army Reserves, and he was called to duty and is now in Afghanistan. So we are trying to extend the high-speed rail as far as possible. I don't know if I'm legally or militarily allowed to say where he is because I don't really know myself, but I think it was publicly noticed where he is actually at this moment. But I know, Tom, you're here and you will be participating in our meeting in nearly all capacities but closed session activities, since we will not be able to have you participate in closed session because of the technical challenges of that. So would you say hello? All right, so he's not.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
There he is.
I didn't throw a speaker's card either.
Yeah,
I actually am here in Afghanistan researching high-speed transport, and apparently that's 2 horses here. That's how it's defined. It's simpler. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to participate, and I look forward to participating. The staff has been great about sending me things by email, and to the extent that email works here, I've had a chance to take a look and look forward to being as full a participant as I possibly can over the next few months.
I will do my very best to attend all of the meetings of which you're not, so you in your vice chair capacity don't have to conduct a meeting in a remote way, but that could add challenges. But your continued participation, I don't know if you're able to share your duration of which you have been asked to be in Afghanistan.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't actually asked, but I'll be here. I'll be here at least 6 months, and I've been an advocate of rotating the meetings around to various sites, and I'm looking forward to the one in Kabul.
All right. Keep hoping.
Having been there, I'm not.
Mr. Kopp.
On your dime. Tom, we miss you.
Yes, and wish you well.
We look forward to a safe period of service and a return to the bosom of the High-Speed Rail Authority.
Thank you.
However, over this, we are not relieving him of his duties either. Therefore, our job will be to ensure that, to the extent that Army allows, the vice chairman is able to participate in our meetings and be engaged, notified, being able to watch on the web the meetings as they are transpiring, receiving the information like all of us as commission members. So the world is a relatively small place, and I think this commission will represent that. On item number 6, Commissioner Katz moved, Mr. Kopp second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. On to item 7.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor
yes, I did
Sanders
wanna-
has arrived.
And we were all going to stand when that occurred, I thought. And, yes, all San Diego residents, please stand. And welcome. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for being here.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pringle, and I appreciate the fact you're having all the San Diego residents stand. I don't even think my staff stood.
They did really quickly, and I'm sure they'll do it again if you wish.
Good morning. I wanted to come over this morning and just got in from San Diego. The region in San Diego County is really excited about the high-speed rail project and all the progress that's been made by all of you, and we certainly appreciate and are watching it very closely. We think San Diego is fertile ground for high-speed rail. We're home to the Lausanne corridor, which is the second busiest Amtrak corridor in the United States, behind only D.C. to New York, and that builds instant ridership into a high-speed rail project. We're also a region that works well within the region to innovate and to work cooperatively together, and we also work very closely with other regions outside San Diego, whether it be Los Angeles or Orange County, whether it be San Bernardino or Riverside counties, and we work closely with all of them. We also tie into the major urban population centers, the same ones I just mentioned, and there is a lot of commuting going on back and forth. And in a world of AB 32 and trying to get people out of their automobiles and into other facets or other modes of transportation, this is an absolutely perfect one in the Southern California region. And most importantly, probably from our perspective, is Southern California is obviously challenged when it comes to airports. We all need to be tied together so that we can get people out of the commuter airplanes and onto a different mode of transportation, and also give them the options and tie those airports together so that our citizens from all of the various regions around can pick the best airport for what they want to do and where they want to travel. Because of the airport capacity issue, San Diego's also spent the past couple of years on a innovative study. We call it innovative, others might call it other things, but we actually sat down and studied what Lindbergh Field is going to have to look like for the next 30 years. And a big part of that, because it's our only major international airport in that region, a big part of that is an intermodal center, which we call Destination Lindbergh. And it's much like what Anaheim has done, and we've modeled it after Mayor Pringle's effort up there. We'll have bus rapid transit going in, we'll have Amtrak, we'll have light rail, we'll have every facet of transportation going through there, including about a 14,000 space parking lot, rental car facilities for the airport. And we look at that as an extension of travel. We're not looking at just as an airport now, we're actually looking at it as a destination so that people can go there and get wherever they need to go in the region. And we believe that that makes all the sense in the world to have the high-speed rail move through there so people can park there very conveniently, or they can fly in there and then move throughout the region and throughout California. We would like to invite the Commission to come to San Diego next year. We'd love to have the opportunity to host you. We'd also like to take the opportunity at that time to have civic leaders and business leaders from around San Diego meet with you to talk about what they envision and to listen to what you envision as the future of high-speed rail in California. And I think that it's something that would be exciting for San Diego, and I think it's something that would certainly be informative for us and let us kind of carve our path into this and work collaboratively with you as we move forward. And finally, myself and many of the big city mayors, especially in California but around the country, have been working cooperatively and collaboratively and going together to lobby the Secretary of Transportation, Ray LaHood. I've been back several times on one of his panels, and we have talked about high-speed rail. He has talked about the fact that California is far ahead of anybody else. They see a tremendous opportunity for investment in high-speed rail in California from a federal level. And I think it would be to our benefit as big city mayors and as regions to combine with the High-Speed Rail Commission to go back and lobby together and let them know that we stand ready to move forward quickly and that we bring the major metropolitan areas throughout California together to go back and lobby with one voice. So with that, I really appreciate you taking me out of order. I know how busy you are, and thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Could I ask
Yes,
a
Mr.
question?
Kopp.
Mayor Sanders, 2-3 years ago, a problem was that the San Diego Association of Governments, commonly referred to as SANDAG, was tied to a different technology than the California High-Speed Rail Authority, namely magnetic levitation. Do you know if that is still the case or is not the case?
No, we're, the entire region, including the Chamber of Commerce, is on board and SANDAG with high-speed rail as this commission's putting that forward. There were some people speaking about maglev. There was also an absence of leadership in some ways. When I came into office, we, as many of you know, San Diego was facing some pretty difficult obstacles. We have put much of that behind us and are on track now. And we believe that high-speed rail is the correct way to do this, and we think it's the most effective way to do it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh, yes, Mr. Crate, I'm sorry. On the screen is the button to push.
Thank you. I would encourage the Commission to take seriously the suggestion that we hold a meeting in San Diego if we can possibly do so. There have to be fewer places on Earth that are in more desperate need of better transportation modes than the low sand corridor. And for whatever reason,
is this mood lighting, or as you talk so sweetly about San Diego like this, someone leaned back on him. There you go. Thanks.
It's a higher authority speaking. So I would encourage us to consider that suggestion, and we should look seriously into it and try and bring San Diego along much faster than we are right now.
Really? Thank you very much.
No, I think that's great. We have one challenge of taking our commission on the road. I know that Commission Member Shank has expressed concern about doing that. Maybe we could break her of that objection, and this may be a great opportunity to try.
And we'd be happy to host everyone.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, may I
yes,
say
please,
thank you? First of all, thank you so much for joining us, Mayor Sanders. It's really a privilege to have you here. It is not easy to get here from San Diego. If we had high-speed rail, you would have been here at 9 o'clock this morning. And yes, I'm always willing to be open to compromise and exception when it comes to San Diego, so I join in the mayor in inviting my colleagues to visit.
That's very nice.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
With that note, and we've talked about this several times, but the Central Valley is invited and open for the authority to meet there as well, so thank you.
Thank you.
I think we may have a travel schedule available soon. And we might come to see you and the Central Valley on the course of our monthly meetings. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. You don't need to go to Orange County. I'll cover that. The next item before us is item 7, and it's pending legislation. I know we're going to receive a brief update on pending legislation. None?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know how the system works, so I don't know if I'm on or not.
Here.
Okay. This item, we provided you with some written report, and unless board members have specific questions, we don't have anything new to present to you.
Very good. This is just an information item. I believe it says action, but there's nothing to take action on.
Correct.
However, I believe at this time there was also an interest to ensure that you shared with the full commission communication from the Speaker's office. Is that correct?
Well, that was under item 8, or the following item.
All right, then we'll do that. Let's get to item 8. Mr. Morshed, on item 8, if there's no other discussion on item 7, pending legislation, I see none. Let's discuss item 8, which is the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act grant discussion of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I forget and neglect to do that, let me share with you, and we provide you with copies, I believe, of a letter we received signed by Speaker Bass and Assemblywoman Gargiani supporting the authority and the work it's doing, and the supporting the authorities' proposed projects for to move forward for the ARRA application. And I know that the Speaker, Ms. Gargiani, planning to go to Washington on September 13th or 14th, I believe, to discuss their support and help us with the application at the federal level.
Very good, thank you.
Now, for the air, you know, this issue has been before you a number of times, and finally, we are at the point of having to make some decision regarding the application. As you all know, the FRA process has some very tight deadlines, and we have to try to meet those deadlines. Our application had tracks 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 3, and 4. We did not have any projects or anything that we could apply for, which we didn't. We are primarily eligible for, or only eligible for track 2, which is a program of projects, which that program is intended for the applicants to apply for a list of projects that will result in a high-speed rail, building of a high-speed rail system, and it has some specific criteria that's in there. We are giving you a report today of what we've done is prepared the list of projects within our total program of San Francisco to Anaheim segment that we believe are capable of meeting the requirement of Federal Railroad Administration and the criteria that they put forward. We are going to, what I'd like to do today is for the board to deliberate on those and give the staff a number of instructions so we can actually move ahead with the preparation of a specific application. One of the things I'd like the board to do is look at the list of projects we've done. You've heard from public a great deal, and you probably will hear some more. And give us some indication as what your view is as to the amount of dollars that we should be aiming for in these 3 different corridors. We have 3 corridors that are eligible for moving forward because we will be meeting the environmental document and clearance requirement and be able to move into the construction phase. So we'd like you to give us a range, because this is a major policy issue that the board should give the staff instruction on what is the total amount that you think we should be applying for, and within that, what are the ranges between these two corridors. Secondly, in order to make our applications more competitive, because this is going to be a highly competitive process. And in order to make our projects more competitive, we think that the authorities should offer to provide matching funds to federal dollars, so in terms of the scoring of the benefits, you will be adding additional benefit by the virtue of the California zone investment. And we'd like you to give us an indication of what you think that percentage is. My staff recommendation has suggested that we offer a matching rate of dollar for dollar, federal dollars matched with about $1 of state, local, and or private money. That's again, I'd like the board to deliberate and give us the instruction on. And then we need to, the deadline for the application is October 2nd, which also happened to be the furlough Friday. We need to, the board currently scheduled to meet on October 1st. So that is a very, that's almost impossible for us to come in and get the board approval on the list of projects and prepare it. And just for the sake of informing you, I just included in your board book the actual application, which is actually about the fourth of what we have to submit for every application we submit. And I was told that also FRA, we do that electronically, but they require that that work be done by a public employee. We can't assign that to a contractor, apparently. I will find out more about it, but that's what I was told. So,
So I know what you're doing on your furlough Friday.
And given that we have very, very few public employees, and mostly our work is done by contractor, that in itself is going to be a challenge. But the October 2nd is the deadline, October 1st, the board meeting. To accommodate the deadlines, I would suggest that the board meet on September 23rd. You received an email from me, and you all responded back, and I'm happy to report that all of you indicated that you will be available. Ms. Shank has some issues with not availability and electronics. Maybe she can participate, but at the same time also I understand that on October 1st, another board member has a problem that won't be attending. So it's either way you may be losing one board member, whether you do it October 1st or 2nd. If you can agree to meet on September 2nd, then we will, I'm sorry, right. September 23rd, which is on Wednesday. Then we would bring you our recommendation for you to final review it and give us indication as to whether you agree or disagree, whether you want us to add or subtract, and whatever else we need to do, and give us a week to prepare the final application.
So part of your recommendation is in lieu of an October 1st board meeting, have a September 23rd board meeting?
I would suggest that we actually, just to be on the safe side.
Yes.
Not to cancel the October 1st meeting in case we come back on the 23rd of September. There is some issues that you don't want to resolve, or you want staff to do more work and give us that.
I understand the answer to the question then. So, because all the other items that we're contemplating on the agenda on October 1st, I was concerned about putting them all on the September 23rd agenda as well. So
we can.
So at this moment in time, your recommendation would be to have added meeting of the authority on September 23rd and leave the rest of the calendar as it is.
No, actually, what I would suggest is that we try to actually have the September 23rd be the board meeting to do all the items, but leave the option, and because we have to do 2 weeks or 10 days notice.
So really all that we're
just in case.
Thank you. All we're going to talk about with this, though, is to add an additional meeting on September 23rd, and we can internally work on what that agenda would be. All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Anything else on this item, Mr. Morshed?
I have a question about this, on this issue.
Madam
Two questions. Yes. Would you make an electronic availability, obviously for Mr. Umberg, but for others, myself, if we can't make it?
We can make the electronics availability, but you have to meet the electronics availability requirement, which is, my understanding is, and George is here to correct me if I misstated, is that the location that you will be participating has to be open to the public. So it can't be a private place. We have arranged, where Mr. Umberg is today, the location was announced, and anyone who wishes to participate with him is able to do that.
Okay.
But Ms. Shank, the answer is yes. So,
yes.
And we will work with our legal staff to ensure that you know the rules and we properly post that.
Thank you.
But the rules are, there's a pre-notification as to where there may be remote access, and it has to be open to the public for that access.
Well, it could be like at a Caltrans office or something, if they're willing to allow
Yeah.
it. And then second, I'm unclear now about what this meeting will, is this a special meeting just for this issue, or will there be other issues taken up? I mean, my preference would be, since I'm not going to be physically present, that we just address this, and that on October 1st we have our regular meeting with our regular agenda.
By the way, that is my preference as well, and I think I'd like to spend some time with Mr. Morshed to talk that through.
Thank you.
And all I would ask you is to basically reserve those 2 dates on your calendar, and then Chairman will determine what's going to be on the agenda, and we will proceed accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Katz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the same item, and I'm not sure when you want to get into more details about it, but I know, for instance, one of the things we've talked about is, for instance, in Norwalk.
We will.
You want to do it now or later, Kurt?
Yeah, we'll step through all of these decision points. Mr. Morshed is going to finish his presentation.
Okay, that's fine.
On that. Yes.
Okay, let me, a few other points I want to make before we get into some of the detail, and that is, one, these 3 corridors, we are either beginning or in the middle or toward the end of the environmental process. There are many items in those corridors that have not been decided yet. They're still under study, and it won't be decided until the final environmental work. So we made some general estimates of what the costs are. But until you know the actual physical condition of what the project is, we do not have a real cost. So when we see these cost estimates I want to just highlight this. These are a very general cost estimate based on some general assumption. It's not an actual cost estimate. Second one is that the cost numbers you see are 2009 cost estimate. The application requires that we provide the cost in the year of construction, which means that for each project, we have to go back and figure out what the midpoint of that construction is and then escalate it to that year, which means that the cost, the numbers that will appear on the application will be probably somewhere between 20 to 30% higher, depending on how many years. If you assume a 5-year 5% inflation over 4 years, that's 20% higher. So that's when you see the application, don't be surprised if the cost all of a sudden is higher than the numbers you see here, because we have to escalate them to the year of construction, not today's dollars.
Yes, if we could, yes, thank you, Mr. President.
And finally, I want to address this, that is that we are still reviewing the FRA's rules, and it's not that clear as to what is the best way to apply. When we have options of applying for a number of applications under one program, or it appears that we have an option of going for a single program and list the project within that. And then we want to, if that under that scenario, and we need to verify this with FRA before we come back to you, would be that the FRA may come back and say, well, you applied for same amount of money, we agree with these, and these, well, we don't agree with the rest of them. And then we will have to adjust that. So on the final application, we will have to come back with some additional clarification as to what the form of that application would be. And one final note, and that is that everything we are talking about here is an application by the High-Speed Rail Authority for the funds. That application will go to the governor, who also would address and work with the other people, because there will be other applications, most likely from Caltrans, and there is a capital corridor entity that may qualify for application. Transway Terminal and themselves may decide that they want to go separate applications. So this is what we're talking about here is the High-Speed Rail Authority's application that will be submitted to the governor for the governor's single application process to move forward. Those are the comments.
Well, Mr. Morshed, on that point, that is, I must have missed that point earlier, because I had felt with the communications I've had with Caltrans and the governor's office, that Track 1 was Caltrans' responsibility to submit an application. And we submitted projects or ideas to that. Last night, I heard directly that Caltrans is contemplating a list of $1 billion worth of projects to submit on their own under Track 2. And Track 2 is, as to what I have seen, is high-speed intercity passenger rail service development programs. So under that definition, there are Caltrans projects that you're saying, if the governor's office chooses, could be a part of a overall state Track 2 application?
That's my understanding. Caltrans believes that they have projects that are eligible under Track 2 requirements, and they want to submit those projects for funding.
Yeah, I'm very concerned about that, because everything we are doing, I'll be very blunt so everybody knows where I'm coming from. I want to maximize the amount of money that this authority has to spend to develop high-speed rail in California with these funds, and not have every other potential applicant pull dollars off to other programs. We're not going to build segments. We're going to be building little pieces. And I know through the president's and the administration's words, and certainly this governor's words, he wants to see high-speed rail operating in the state, not a handful of grade separations built. So I really do think that we probably need to be very direct with the governor's office as to what we would hope would they would consider in this application process as well, which would be the maximum amount of funding for California to be directed to high-speed rail development through this authority. Mr. Dearden.
Mr. Chairman, I really share your concern. We should have seen this coming when Caltrans was designated as the organization to pull together the grant application when the governor got us together in his office. But my sense was, and I knew that Will Kempton's sense was, that the Track 2 funding was supposed to be for the California project. Track 1 were for projects, for grade separations and other individual projects, but for the systems, that was Track 2. That was ours. Now, technically, an element of an operating system may qualify for a grant that would increase the speed for that system under the law. But that would be doing what the governor and the president said they didn't want to do. That would be peanut buttering. And that's the words that have been used. Spreading the money all around to a lot of different projects and not having any operating segment created. And I think we've got to remind them that the president, the secretary of transportation, and our governor do not want to do peanut buttering. We want to have an operating segment, several operating segments in our situation, 3 designated operating segments built by these funds. We're not going to have another whack at stimulus funds. It's very unlikely that we're going to see another stimulus bill with this much funding in it. If we don't use these funds properly for operating segments, we're not going to have something to show the state or the nation in terms of how high-speed rail can operate.
So I would just like to ask the commission if, one, we're all speaking in one voice on that we do, and 2, that we build all of our responses to the staff's recommendations before us based upon us submitting the application. Therefore, we can't look at under the assumption that others may apply for a portion. We have to look at the assumption that on Track 2, we are the application coming from California. I say that because I think the very first ordering of decisions that we need to make would be, 1, talking about what we would like to direct staff to do in terms of what the total amount of that application should be. I think that's one of the questions staff has before us. What would we like the total value of that application coming from high-speed rail? 2, what would we recommend as a match that we will present in our application, and the match that we provide would be made up of what funds or what types of resources. Then 3 is the list of projects and segments that are here if we wish to make any modifications or directions to staff of that. And then finally, to agree on the process that Mehdi has laid out, that we would come back on the 23rd for a meeting to specifically hear that recommendation, and then have an October 1st meeting schedule as well. So that's kind of the ordering of what I see we need to accomplish. Mr. Kopp.
I'd like to put that description in the form of a motion for adoption as a overall policy.
Well, my description there was just to say what we need to decide. So I want to decide those. Then we should advance them in a motion. Yes.
You want just one motion?
Yes, I think that'd be good. Ms. Schenk.
Yeah, should we add into there, or is that implicit, that there will be further conversations with the governor's office so that we are all on the same page? I mean, it would be sort of tragic if we go off on our own saying, oh, well, this was the decision, and there's some misunderstanding that can easily be cleared up.
Well, I'll promise you personally and publicly that I will have those discussions, and I'm
Good,
sure
thank
there's
you.
another few members of the
David.
authority that might as well. Oh, Mr. Crane.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do know some people in the governor's office. So we do need to drill down to the bottom of this, because one thing that we conveyed to the FRA and DOT, and that the governor has conveyed, again, most recently to the vice president this past weekend, is that California, and we've been praised by this, by the FRA, that California has a very organized application from the state, as opposed to a bunch of entities inside the state. And in fact, they have used California as a model for other states, or so they've told me. So I'm surprised to hear that, in fact, I just emailed a colleague so I could find out about it. I'm surprised to hear that Caltrans separately has $1 billion that they want to submit under Track 2. So we'll have to drill to the bottom of that. I will say this, however. We are in a massive competition here. And I don't think Californians realize the nature of the competition we're in. We have a bond that passed, which is the equivalent of $9 billion of equity capital. Think of ourselves as a company. We have $9 billion of equity capital that we can spend, that the taxpayers have given us under certain terms, and we have to raise $31 billion from other people, at a minimum. That $31 billion has to come from some combination of the federal government, who right now is only, and I put only in quotes, providing $8 billion, vendors, private enterprise, local governments, developers, employee unions who are interested in providing capital, these sorts of projects, a wide variety of people. And at the same time that this is happening, our competitors in the United States, since there's now a frenzy since the president announced the $8 billion that's available, are saying that California isn't ready. And I'm well aware of certain states in particular that are closely associated with the president that are saying that they're much further along than California is, and other states are saying the same thing. So ultimately, and this has not been helped by lawsuits along the line in Northern California and weak meetings at the local level where we haven't been able to communicate to the world that we're actually further along than everybody else. So we're in this massive competition, and at the end of the day, whatever application that we have to put in should be fully coordinated with Caltrans, and it should be one application, but it should be designed to be the things that get the most money from the federal government. So that's my way of saying we'll drill down and find out about it, but the application's got to be the one designed to extract the most money for California from the federal government.
So if there's no other comments on that, I'd like to open up the discussion then about what we would be asking staff to do to put a dollar amount on the request. We all know that it's an $8 billion pool, that there's a track 1. You got an answer back, David? Is that right? All right. We'll see you in a few minutes. The Track 1 applications were submitted, and what was the total value of the Track 1 application submitted in California?
California's, I believe, was about $1.1 billion.
So some portion of that may be funded to California in Track 1. I personally think it would be very legitimate if our request was equal to 1/2 of the total available funds. And if there is a reduction off of that because of Track 1, we may be in the range of $3.5 billion as a request target. But that is dependent upon, under my scenario, that's dependent upon what we may receive under Track 1. Does anybody else have any comment on that or any other direction? Mr. Cobb.
Well, could we discuss it for a moment?
Yes, Mr. Dearden.
In talking in some great detail with the folks from Florida and Chicago and the Midwest, Chicago area, my impression is that they want to be ready, but Florida is not ready. They would have been ready had they not been sidetracked by their prior governor, but they're having now to go back and refresh basic environmental documents. So they do not have a certified environmental clearance, even a program-level environmental clearance at this stage. And as a consequence, I don't know how they're going to be able to qualify, even though they want to. And I hope eventually they do. So if they get a bite of this apple, it won't be for major construction. It's going to be for maybe significant planning or individual project funds, but not a big portion of the systems level funds. The same thing is true, I think, Mr. Chairman, in regard to some of the areas around Chicago. I think a couple of corridors will qualify that are wholly contained in currently existing rail corridors, where they can get an exemption from having to do the environmental documents. But as long as FRA sticks to the letter of the law, they will not be qualifying for a major portion of the $8 billion, which means that we could, and we've been told this by the Secretary and by others frequently, that we could be eligible to receive more than half the funds. And if we're going to be cut back, I wouldn't want it to be cut back from half the funds to something significantly less than half. If they're going to cut us back, let them cut us back to half the funds. So that would mean we'd have to go in with the bargaining position of more than half the funds. So I would hope that we could apply for a larger amount and submit our application in priority sequence, so that if we don't get all that we want, the lowest priority projects fall off the list. Is that a reasonable approach?
It might be. I'd like to hear some of the comments. I think it's kind of risky. I'm concerned about that. I don't know. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Morshed, but aren't Track 2 dollars really development dollars, not planning dollars?
That's right.
The Track 2 dollars are actually for, we have to have a program level environmental work, which we already have. So the money is for doing the environmental work, engineering, and construction.
I see.
The final environment.
Very good.
And if I,
yes.
Just one quick comment relative to whether or not we are available and we are, or we are ready or not. And that is that some years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, the authority made a decision to partner with the Federal Railroad Administration in all its environmental work. And everything we've done so far, Federal Railroad Administration has been our partner. They are the one who certified the program level document. They are the one who are actually involved in the project level environmental work for us. So when it comes to the readiness or not, nobody knows better than who is ready, who is not, than the people who are going to be evaluating the contract. Notwithstanding what other people may be saying, they may not be saying, FRA is intimately knowledgeable about our work. They're partnering it. And they know that we are in this particular line, this track 2 development, that we are more ready than anybody else that's in there because they've been with us for the last 5 years. And even some of the discussions about whether we should look at this alternative or we shouldn't look at this alternative, we never make a unilateral decision to do that. We check with FRA, and when they concur with that, then we proceed, because we don't want to do that to be disrupting it. So they're very aware of how far we are.
Very good. Ms. Schenk.
Thank you. I'll try to make this brief. I'm always uncomfortable discussing strategy in public session because the other side who makes the decision is listening in, I'm quite sure. But in any event, when we went to visit with Secretary LaHood early in the spring, it was, I think, one of the first times that I went into a situation where I had in hand and came away thinking that we weren't asking for enough. Clearly, the Secretary, his staff, and everybody else that we met with viewed, and albeit it was early in the process, but viewed California as the most ready, as the one way ahead of the pack. So I would not be uncomfortable asking for more than half. I don't think it would be a surprise to anyone in Washington if we did. And just as sort of an added comment, I wholly vigorously endorse what David was saying. This is a competition. And from sort of lots of experience, unfortunately, I know that other states sort of stay on the sidelines a little bit and look at California just waiting for us to shoot ourselves in the foot so they can then jump in and pick up whatever the money is. So we really have to be very mindful of what David is saying. And yes, unified, we're together, we are on top of this, and we continue to be the first horse in the race.
Mr. Katz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of items that I wanted to raise just as we're putting this together, because I agree with the previous comments. I do think it's good to go for more. I do think it's good to have, but I do think it's important that both the perception and the reality is that everyone's on the same page. And I appreciate David and the work you want to do in terms of with Caltrans. I think we have to make sure we're all on the same page, and certainly that's the message that comes back, and goes back to Washington. So there's no excuses back there for us. I worry about the Bay Area situation just because it's an excuse if somebody wants it to be. So along those same lines, in this item in particular, when I look at things like the Norwalk station, which I discussed earlier with Medi and some of the things that are going around Union Station, I think we need to be a little more, we need to make sure that, for instance, our alternative studies have alternatives in them. Even though I know they've been studied and rejected for what's probably a very good reason, I think it's sort of hard to go forward with an alternative study that only has one choice. We need to at least keep the process piece working, and would like to see that, added back. And there's some general, I'm not looking to, restudy what's already been studied. I'm looking to make sure that this is a bulletproof document that goes forward, and I think in that regard, we can discuss the envelope around, if you will, Union Station or the Norwalk piece. There's some ways to do that, and would like to, just mention that to Medi and the staff and work us between now and the next meeting to get that done.
So your recommendation on the first item that we're talking about in terms of the request, I guess before I get to that, when will we know allocations on track 1?
There wasn't any deadline.
So the challenge of knowing and not knowing what's on track 1 is that's $1 billion in requests. And it may be 0 that we get, or it may be $1 billion that we get, and if we make the wrong assumption, then we're way over requesting or possibly under requesting. So I think part of my initial point of not looking like we are overreaching, I still want to reach far enough to make sure we cover, every available opportunity. And that means if we don't know the outcome of track 1, we should at least reach beyond that and get as much as we can under a track 2 application.
No, and I agree with you on that. And also, and frankly, because it doesn't necessarily change the cost to make sure the alternative's included. Because you still will have the primary recommendation, as I understand the process. So I don't know that.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the actual
No, I understand what you're saying.
The amount that we will be putting in, and the dollar amounts on each of these projects, as Mr. Morse said, that's just a target range of the information we know at this point in time, and that could go up.
Mr. Chairman, could I
Yes,
mention
Mr.
one thing that hasn't come up yet? And that is that although we're talking about $8 billion in the AHSRA high-speed rail funds, already this year an additional $2 billion has been created in the appropriations bill for high-speed rail.
And I appreciate that, and we can talk about all the potential federal money later on this afternoon, though.
What the process is intended to be. It hasn't been established yet. FRA, I think, is going to be rolling over applications to be looked at in terms of the appropriation funds in the coming year.
We have a deadline for October 2nd to send in an application for $8 billion. That's our job.
Right.
There may be more money, there may be future applications, and we can talk about that. I don't want to, I want to make some decisions and get to direct our staff as to what they need to do. So.
Could I close my comment by saying that
Mr. Dearden.
My strong sense is that we should have a needs-based project go back and not a fiscally constrained project list go back there. If we give them a needs-based list, that puts us in good position to bargain for future funds in later times, if we don't get all we want this time. If we constrain ourselves in advance, then it doesn't look like we need additional funds when the additional funds become available.
I don't agree with that at all. I believe that anybody from FRA who's been working with us, who understands the full extent of our system, knows the full extent of our system, and if we put in an application for $3 or $4 or $4.5 billion, they know that doesn't fund the whole system. They know there are great needs, and we will be developing something and moving forward from that. The problem is if we just say all of this, treat it equally, and go ahead and here's a whole laundry list of projects as we did in the first application, we have not done our job in prioritizing where we want that exactly. And part of the prioritization process is not to demonstrate that we are asking far beyond what we should be asking for. I believe we should contain that, prioritize it, and say this is what we ask for out of this $8 billion pot. Mr. Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a really quick question. The inflation assumptions that we're making, so that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot with that, are we using an inflation assumption that the federal government is asking us to assume?
We will be using the inflation that just about everybody will be using, which I think
what
is
do you
going to
mean
be
just
the construction.
About everybody? Well, the last thing we want to do is assume something that is detrimental to our
No, but usually most people, and I'm not an expert on what inflation we use, but and John Harrison is here, he can answer that. But my understanding is everybody uses the engineering news record data for inflation, but
just make sure. Just make sure when we make the application that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot, is all I'm saying. Use an inflation factor which is to our advantage, not our disadvantage.
Good.
You don't have to go through explaining it right now what it's going to be, as long as it's not to our disadvantage.
Just a couple of points, if I may. I'm John Harrison, Deputy Program Director. The FRA does not prescribe the inflation rate, the escalation rate that applicants are to use. I believe our intent right now has been to use 3.5% per year.
Well then, Mr. Chairman, we should make sure, since we're in a competition here, and so we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot, make sure that we're not using an inflation factor which puts us at a disadvantage to our competitors. Find out what everybody else is using, and don't use something which is greater than what they're using. It's just obvious. You know, you don't want to inflate our numbers unnecessarily.
Very good. Mr. Kopp.
Mr. Chairman and members, first, Mr. Crane's point is one I wanted to explore later with the executive director, namely, what are the sources of an inflation rate? CPI, or there's some other data that's used. But, Mr. Chairman, the reason I evoked a motion previously, and the reason that I think the application amount should be $4 billion, is because I'm thinking of my own reaction. If I am in the decision-making process, is the California High-Speed Rail Authority application simply throwing everything against the wall and seeing what sticks? Now, maybe that is a persuasive kind of course in Washington. But I'm just one human being, one person. I'll tell you what my reaction would be. It would be adverse. I would want an application that's well-defined and that's realistic and that thinks about the rest of the nation and thinks about the person who ultimately makes the decision, Secretary of Transportation. And to me, it just is common sense that $4 billion for California takes into consideration all of the factors and virtues of our project compared to all the nascent projects around the country. And then the other part of that will be the match.
Yep.
So
Very good.
whenever you're ready, I will reiterate a motion.
Well, now would be, I heard what you said. There's a motion from Mr. Kopp and a second by Mr. Burns. Any discussion on that?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Morshed.
my suggestion is that instead of going with a single dollar, that you give us an indication of some kind of a range, because when we go around trying to come up with projects, we can't neatly fit them into $4 billion. So just tell us, 4 to 5 or something like that, so there's some areas to work with.
Mr. Kopp, would you accept a 3.5 to 4.5 range?
Yes.
That's acceptable? Any discussion on that, Ms. Flores?
I just want to make sure that, we're talking about ranges here, particularly in the Central Valley. I don't know why we couldn't try to reach that high range if possible.
Yes. Very good. All right, so in terms of just what that application value is, that's this first step. That's a motion before us. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm opposed.
Mr. Deardon. The next item is what we will be directing staff as it relates to the match itself. My sense is that is one of the strengths of California. We have bond proceeds. People know that. I think that's of great value. But I think the nuance of Mr. Morshed's comment on this is one I think is appropriate to be a part of the motion, that we should state in our application that there's a one-to-one match that will be provided, but that match doesn't need to be the state bond. That could be any other resources that we could develop for that individual segment, but by stating a one-to-one match, we know the state bond will be the backstop to ensure that we do have the capacity for that one-to-one match. But I would hope in some areas we could find other resources to provide for that. Motion by Mr. Deardon, seconded by Mr. Katz. Any discussion on that item? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now, the actual list itself, as staff has worked through the various projects, and I commend staff for taking this first cut at it, as it's a difficult job to get all this information and to be able to respond to many of the anticipatory questions of FRA. I, however, am challenged by the Central Valley piece myself, and I'm challenged that we are articulating a specific type of project, and I still feel that we need to be more open to selecting a project in the Central Valley that really does connect cities. I am personally concerned, even though I know there's the pressure for the independent utility, and part of the discussion that FRA is going to be putting forward is to ensure that what we do has independent utility. Mr. Morshed has gone over that with me enough. I get it. But The challenge with that independent utility and what the proposal from the Fresno to Bakersfield section and Fresno to Merced to Fresno section basically are to build high-speed rail track system outside of those cities that will be the high-speed rail system when we build it into the cities, but the independent utility would be to allow Amtrak or other types of services to be utilized on that track. That may fit in that narrow restriction of FRA discussing independent utility, but to me, I don't believe we can demonstrate to residents of the Central Valley, but more importantly, residents across California, that we're building a high-speed rail system that's getting people from point A to point B. This doesn't do that. And I believe if we're going to ask for funding, I feel that we would be much stronger in our request and much stronger in the final outcome to be able to present to the public that we have developed a segment, an operating segment, be it from Bakersfield proper to Fresno proper, station to station, or Fresno to Merced, whatever staff sees and can develop. And we certainly wouldn't be able to do both of those within this application. We'd only be able to advance one. But I understand why it's written this way in our report. I just don't believe, it may be saleable to the FRA, I just don't know if it's saleable to the public, that after $3-4 billion worth of investment, we really aren't getting into any city. We are just covering territory. Therefore, I would like to give staff latitude to consider other components in drafting the proposal for the Central Valley than just the prescriptive, limited areas that are presented in this report. Ms. Flores? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Morshed.
Mr. Chairman, you had discussion about this, and I just want to point out one thing. I know that there's a lot of people who would like to have us build a section from Fresno to Bakersfield and be the only section, and that would be fine. However, when we say we have a section, operable section, is under this application. If you build a system between Fresno downtown station to downtown Bakersfield, we build some structures that has no use until you actually have a high-speed train system. Because the station that we will be building in downtown Fresno is not the station that Amtrak is using. It will be a station that we'll be using for a high-speed train when we have high-speed train. So you will have a fairly expensive structures through the city of Fresno sitting there waiting for someday for a high-speed train to come along. Because under this application, we don't have any train. We don't have any money to buy the train. We haven't processed any application for buying the train, so it will be great to build it, but you have to be careful what you build and what use you're going to put it to.
Well, but there's a big difference between this application being the sum and total of our activities and all of the other potential activities we can have. So to say that this application may build the structure and may build the track, I believe there's a lot of other resources we're going to be bringing to bear to move forward with developing a train system and purchasing that system and moving forward with that. I know the caution and maybe the the engineering overview of how you take step by step, but at the end of the day, we need to be building a train system, and that means we're going to have trains run on it. If this application allows us to build the structures, so be it. There's a lot of time between now and 2015 or 2016 in which this will be completed in the construction. And I have every confidence that we'll be buying train systems sometime in that period. I get that, George. So I understand, Mehdi, one of the issues of independent utility on the federal dollars is to make sure that where those federal dollars are spent, if all of the funding for this stopped, would they be utilized? And I just think, I'm not pre-selecting, I'm just saying as an example, if you do talk Bakersfield to Fresno, and if there is a one-to-one match, and if the federal dollars are being used for the rail component between them, and the state dollars or local match or otherwise are building the structures going into those cities, then the federal dollars are being used for an area where there can be defined as an independent utility. The state dollars are the dollars being used to construct the structures that move into both of those cities. So I just ask that we open up this a little wider for consideration of our staff to look at ways that they can present options to us at the September 23rd meeting that basically say we can build an operating section in the Central Valley instead of a couple strips of track.
I'll support that.
Any other comments, Ms. Flores?
Yeah, I just want to make one comment. You don't have a high-speed train unless you have the Central Valley portion, because you can't get 220 miles anywhere. The reality is you don't have a high-speed train without that. But I think what's really important here is that when I read the independent utility for that section and I read everything else, this is the only section that really makes sense to someone else reading the comments about that. And I read it and I thought, if what has to be said here under the independent utility, I think this section here says more than any other section as for that part of it. But I think we certainly have to look at other options. I'm open to that. I just don't know how we can get high-speed train without this portion going through the Central Valley.
Yeah.
Not immediately, anyway.
Sure, and I want to make sure, I actually am trying to figure out how to spend money in the Central Valley and have it such that people see an operating train system. I also know that folks in the Central Valley, a big area, are all want to link arms together, but at the end of the day, there's going to have to be a staging of the development. It all is not going to happen at once. And therefore, someone's going to have to set that staging forward. We're going to get stuck with doing that. If we saw a cavalcade of expression from the Central Valley saying, do this section first, period, the fine supervisor suggested his point of view, which I thought was very brave. I haven't necessarily heard many folks in the Central Valley saying, this is how we think you should be staging it. But I think that level of comment is good, and as we can develop a justifiable application around that, I think that is also good. I just want to make sure we have more alternatives than the ones that are presented. All right, so in terms of that list of project alternatives with the modification I suggested, any other modifications or changes anyone would like to see? And there's a motion on that then to direct staff accordingly by Mr. Kopp. Is there a second? Second. By Mr. Burns. Any further discussions? I'm seeing.
Just a clarification.
Yes, sir.
Does that include the recommendation about the ranges that was suggested for those two corridors?
Yeah, that's my intent.
That was mine as well.
Okay, just want to make sure that that's...
I do want to modify one of those recommendations, G, which speaks of the board or a designated committee. I want to delete or a designated committee.
Yeah, okay, so we are talking though about the list of projects, Mr.
Yeah,
Kopp.
those
So that's
go
the
to
motion.
D, A to D.
Right, so that is the motion before us right now. Any further discussion on that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the motion?
Yeah, the motion is the projects that are listed with the modification in the Central Valley to review expanded options of available projects in the Central Valley, living within the ranges that are prescribed by staff. That is what the motion was. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Ms. Flores. And then the final action, I think, Mr. Kopp, it does get to your point. When this staff report was originally sent out, there was contemplation that we may not be able to have a full board meeting, and but now we have resolved that. So the final action would be the board would review the staff recommendations at our September 23rd meeting. All right.
So moved.
That's a recommendation motion. And is there a second? A motion by Mr. Kopp, seconded by Mr. Katz. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Well, thank you. Now, Mr. Morshed, you have the simple job. Next item before us is item number 9.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to have Mr. Jeff Barker give you the detail of it, but before he does it, let me make some, some general statement. And that is that obviously outreach is a very, very important part of our activity, as always has been an important part of our activity. And despite some of the comments to the contrary, I think our outreach effort has been outstanding, and the fact that we have managed to environmentally clear a very large project with relatively minor distraction it's an indication that that's been a very, very successful effort. And the reason that I brought this issue before the board was this, that the outreach contract currently for the general outreach is under the program manager's contract, and therefore the outreach consultants report to the program manager, and who reports to me, and we didn't have a direct connection between the outreach. And I felt that being that important, we needed to restructure our outreach activity. It started out by bringing Mr. Jeff Barker in as a deputy in charge of communication outreach, and then moving forward with the re-advertisings with the outreach in order to bring them directly under our direct supervision. And that's the process we followed. We asked you to authorize us to go for a RFP, which we did, and we received, and Jeff will give you the detail. I do want to emphasize one thing, and that is that I am concerned about the issue of transition. We have an ongoing activity that's going on every day. We have people on the outreach who are very familiar with our project, and on a daily basis they can respond. Now, when you switch team, we need to be able to have a seamless transfer, so we don't end up with a period of time where there is a lot of confusion and who does what, and then as the new team learns about what we are going to do, and so there has to be a plan for a transition, which I would ask the winning contractor to provide before we actually enter into that contract. And with that, I want to have Jeff go over the detail of what we did and who applied and what the recommendations.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Cotton.
Refresh my memory through the chair to what Mr. Moore said as to the rationale for this RFP, understanding that others and I voted to approve it in light of the fact that Mr. Barker was engaged as the deputy director for communications about a month ago.
What was that?
What was the rationale for then putting out a new RFP for such a new contract?
As I said, we have an outreach component of part of our program management. That is, so our outreach is a subcontractor to the outreach, entire outreach team is a subcontractor to the PB contract. Therefore, anything that the outreach does, they have to report to the program manager, who then reports to me. And I felt very strongly that the outreach activity should be something that is directly related from the authority staff, myself and my deputy, to the outreach rather than going through the program managers. And since we could not legally take the outreach and change that contract and move it over to that, we had to re-advertise, and that's the reason.
All right, so it was
Yes,
a
Mr.
contractual relationship issue. But explain then the rationale for creating the Deputy Director of Communication, which, so to speak, is in-house for the same or a similar purpose.
Well, the Deputy Director's communication is more than just the outreach. That's the person who is on a day-to-day basis at the office, taking care of all the communication, making sure the reports are set up, the policy for communication, set up the policy for organization of various outreach activities, and it is basically an extension of my staff. I can't do all of these by myself. I need to have deputies who take over part of these activities, and the outreach activity is one of them. Carrie Purvahidi is the Chief Deputy Director. She takes over a great deal of responsibility. Dan Levitz is in charge of environmental planning. He takes over those. So that's the delegation that has to take place in order to get this work done. And that was the rationale for bringing Mr. Barker in there, and I'm very, very, very happy to have him. Thank you.
Very good. Yes, welcome.
Yeah, as I think everybody can sense, this project's entering a new period, and reaching out to Californians and making sure they're informed about the project is critical. In this RFP process, which called for a contract of about 4.5 years with a ceiling of a $9 million contract, we received 9 applications. I did that through a formalized RFP process. Scored those applications, the ones that received over 85% of the score, through a panel that consisted of myself, Chief Deputy Director Carrie Purvahidi, and Mike Bowman, who is the Deputy Secretary over at the Business Transportation and Housing Agency. We brought back 5 of those applicants for oral interviews. We evaluated those based on the cost estimates they proposed to us, their understanding of the project, the amount of resources and the breadth of resources they committed to the project, their experience in doing this kind of thing, and the number of personnel and personnel hours, how much of their time we would have. After that process, the oral process, we had a unanimous decision. The scoring, if you're interested in that, the top firm, Mercury Public Affairs, received a score of 91. Followed by another firm of 90, 87. So they were in the scoring process the highest scoring firm.
Very good. I know that one thing, the contract itself is over a 5-year period. There are opportunities to stop the contract or terminate the contract any time within that period, or how is that structured?
It's as yet undefined. The RFP advertised for a general period of about 4.5 years. You could direct us to enter into a contract with any number of options, okay, whether there be review periods or exit clauses.
Okay. Additionally, then, I don't know if you know this, Mr. Barker, but Mr. Morshed, over the last multiple of years, we've had a public outreach service being provided. How much have we been spending on that, and would this replicate exactly those services?
Mr. Chairman, first of all, let me clarify that we have extensive outreach that is part of our project level environmental work contracts. So we have 8 other contracts, each one of them have their own outreach component. This particular one is a overall statewide management outreach, which was under program management, and I believe we've been spending around $1 million or more, and that's something I need to check with Carrie Purvahidi what the actual number was. My understanding was it's a little over $1 million a year. We also, in going for this contract, when we did 2 things, I decided to roll in the activities relating to the management of the website to the outreach contract, and also add to the outreach contract the actual, some of the work that the management, not the data that goes into it, but the management of the business plan that were required by the legislature for us to produce, and that the outreach would do that. They would take the data from the engineers and finance people and et cetera, but the management of the activity would part of the outreach, and that's what this is.
Hello?
Hello?
Are you there?
Yes, my calling card ran out. I'm back on.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Morshid. Very good. This estimates report. Any comment by board members? Ms. Schenk.
Yeah, a couple things. First, let me preface what I'm going to say by saying that I understand the need that we're entering a new era to move forward to a different management of our outreach. And so I'm one of the ones who supported this process that we look for, take a new look. And what I have to say is not personal to Jeff or Carrie or anybody else, but I am very uncomfortable by the process by which we have come to this point. The RFP went out on July 17th with a response less than a month later in the middle of summer. We got these, what was it, 11 responses, Jeff?
9 responses.
9 responses.
Which I'm told is it.
And let me say for the record that I was not contacted by anybody during the course of this process. I don't know any of these companies except, of course, Chris Deutschman's, who worked with us for the past several years. And I know by national reputation, Porter Novelli and Fleischman Hillard. I mean, I've heard of them. I haven't heard of or know any of the other respondents. I also know Carrie. Jeff, we met for the first time last month. And I don't know Mr. Bowman. This is a very important decision. It involves $9 million and 4.5 years. With all due respect to what the chairman was alluding to, once you enter in a contract, you don't want to break the contract or end it or cancel it unless there is justifiable cause, fraud, mismanagement, et cetera. So I'm of the view that we need to enter into this very carefully at the outset because we're going to be living with it for a number of years. In my experience, I have really never either awarded a contract or hired someone where I didn't have an opportunity to have a discussion with at least 2 or 3 of the top applicants that the staff has vetted and has brought up, the top 2 or 3 or maybe sometimes even 4 finalists, so that I could ask questions, others could ask questions. I am, as I say, very uncomfortable with this process. For me to rely, to put my vote on and reliance on one recommendation is not something I'm used to doing and don't feel that I can do at this time, with all due respect to everyone who was involved in this.
Very good. Mr. Katz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got some concerns similar to Lynn's. I'm maybe in a little different place in that I think I'm prepared to move forward with a modification of this. As I think the chair's got some ideas that I think are very helpful in that regard. But I wanted to raise a more general question in terms of the information flow. And this goes back to something I think I raised in my first meeting several months ago. The staff report and recommendation here, wouldn't be adequate in kindergarten. There is no discussion of deliverables. There's no discussion of what our expectation is of them. There's no, I am assuming based on the conversations we've had, Jeff, and what you've told me, that they ranked the highest, that they went through a rigorous interview process to get there. But I don't have anything to support that. And I think that it's important that we do have that because of the nature of the contract, because of the size of the contract, as the chair and Ms. Shank have both mentioned, because frankly, we need a good communications plan, because I don't think we've been doing a great job of that up till now. And particularly if we're going to get the public support to move this forward, we need to make sure that, one, that we operate in as transparent manner as we possibly can, and that we have that kind of information. And so I would ask staff, not just on this contract, but on all the things we're doing in the future, I would like to see much more detail in that staff report so I can understand better what's coming before us.
Very good, Mr. Kopp.
I'm of the same views as Commissioner Shank, and with respect to detail, Commissioner Katz. The RFP, among other things, requires the provision of references of at least 3 clients where prior work's been performed, and if applicable, the pertinent data about the last 3 state contracts. Yesterday, late in the day, I got a Xerox of, I guess, the curriculum vitae, resumes of some of the people who are part of this particular proposal. I don't recognize any name but one. I am obviously concerned about Northern California. I've never heard of the individual, know nothing about the individual. We need a better communication apparatus and entity, and all of this means to me, and then also it requires a submission of subcontracts. I don't know the references, I don't know the subcontracts. I cannot support the recommendation at the present time without further documentation. And it also occurs to me, even though this hasn't been the custom and practice, maybe it should be, that on other boards in which I've had to make a decision about an award of a contract, I think of the San Francisco retirement system, there's been presentations to the board by the 2 top or the 3 top, whatever it may be. And I think, Mr. Chairman and members, that in this instance, this is a $9 million contract. That's a good deal of money. It's much more than has been paid the current holder of this responsibility. As a matter of fact, that contract had to be reduced after the bond issue, an exercise in which I may say the holder of that contract provided a good deal of informational assistance to those of us who were involved in that campaign, which was not always a sure thing winner. So I would suggest respectfully to all who have been involved in the time and effort that we defer this either to the October 1st meeting or the September 23rd meeting, whatever the chair and the executive director deemed to be the most practical and feasible.
Very good. Yes, Mr. Dearden.
I want to go back to something Quentin said at the very beginning, and that is that we had certainly some difficulties within our community relations, public relations capacity, but it seemed to be more of a problem of coordination than of quality. And it was because of that problem of coordination that could not be legally addressed that I think we put the RFP out. I think that's the reason why I voted. It wasn't because I was dissatisfied with the then community relations firm that was running it from Sacramento, but that firm had no ability to control the work of the individual firms that were supporting the individual corridor projects, and as a consequence they stepped on each other's toes and put out conflicting information, and it caused us some problems. We're in a position now of talking about starting all over again. And I think the startup difficulty of a new organization is going to be profound. Maybe we should have foreseen that when we got into a new RFP, but I didn't. I'm ill at ease with seeing this kind of a change at this time. I think it puts us at a very distinct disadvantage at a time when David, who had to leave, mentioned that we need to be communicating more effectively with especially our financing organizations and certainly along the corridors. So I'm uncomfortable with the direction we're taking. Certainly, I don't think it would be appropriate to approve this contract. In fact, it's obvious that we're not going to be approving it today. But if we're going to bring it back, we need to bring it back with some instructions. We can't just be here where we are next month.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Well, I have heard all the comments, and this is my recommendation. First off, I recommend that the board members take a little more responsibility and scrutiny in what they're being asked to do. You had an RFP before you. You saw it. We voted on it. It was a recommendation of the executive director, and we responded to it. We gave that authority to the executive director to move forward with this process. He established a panel by which a review of the contracts would be presented. That is the trust we placed in our staff and our structure, and now we are suggesting that that's something that we would like to revisit. I just ask that on any contract, be it on this one, which could account for a number of millions of dollars over the next 5 years, or any one of the other contracts that we voted on to hire engineering firms and over the last couple of years that amount to $25, $40 to $120 million. We took the recommendation of our staff working through the process that they presented. All I ask is that particularly in these areas where I may not see all of those points or our staff may not, that's why things are brought before the board. And the RFP was presented to the board at the last meeting, and it was expedited, Ms. Schenk, for the specific purpose of our staff's concern on 2 points. One, that it would be at this meeting in which we would make a decision. And that decision is we need to augment our voice. Mr. Moorshed specifically said that the concerns that had been raised on our outreach plan around the state had brought a great degree of concern from many members of this board. Mr. Moorshed said we needed to modify that and to expand those efforts and to make sure we had a coordinated effort around California, particularly in those core areas. Additionally, Mr. Moorshed brought up in his staff report that was presented to this board with virtually every member who is sitting here now present with the exception of Mr. Burns, Mr. Moorshed said we are under a requirement to develop a business plan and have it presented to the legislature, a revision of our business plan by December. That under this contract there would be an expanded responsibility for reviewing the business plan and augmenting it, and that responsibility would be that of the outreach coordinating team. Maybe at that moment in time there should have been a fuller presentation of all of the components and how how government listens to the presentations and how recommendations are made. Because I do think at that point in time, if the recommendation was made that bring the top couple qualifiers to the committee and have them present before the full committee, that probably would have added a great deal of benefit. Not to suggest our staff's recommendation would be different, but our staff could make a recommendation and ensure that a couple of those teams were able to present. And this is something that is subjective in a certain way, but also something we all have to live with, what our team is saying on our behalf out in that community and across the state. So I am challenged to figure out exactly what we should do because we are living in an expedited timeline, but I do think that we should not take an action on this today, that in fact fuller staff report needs to be presented, as well as available at the next meeting. There needs to be a presentation made by certainly the firm that is being recommended, but possibly others. And I'd like to hear board members' comments offline as to how best to ensure that that presentation is made, so that people on, or at least this authority membership, can hear exactly what's being proposed, and ensure that when we give direction for a contract, that we are able to move forward with that contract appropriately. I'd also suggest, regardless of where we fall on this, the $9 million value of the contract and the 5-year timeline of the contract is all subjected to our authorizing that activity to take place. That most contracts we have the ability, and we would under this one, to cancel it, revoke it, terminate it, with or without cause. And we also have the ability to give a level of work to the contractor, be it up to $9 million at the max or much less than that. That was what the executive director put in on the total value that the contract could attain over 5 years. I would like to be very precise. I think that whoever we bring on to do this, and I believe we need to do a better job in outreach. I have heard from virtually everybody on this board that has expressed that. So I think this is a good idea to make some change and bring on a strong team and aggressively move forward. But I'd also like to make sure that there are benchmarks as well as trigger points for activity, and such that we should have a 6-month contract to be able to move forward through a transition and set up a program so that we see as a board this is brought back before us whenever we make that decision 6 months later, so that we can have that assessment to tell specifically that team how they're doing. And two, I believe that a year-by-year contract is a much better way to move forward with these types of contracts, where every year there is not the expectation that someone will have that contract for 5 years or life, but every single year they must come and justify their position. So I know we aren't writing the terms of a contract, general services or other elements of state government would, but at the end of the day, I would like those types of components to be in any contract for public outreach and communication, to ensure that we, as a board, can hold them accountable every step of the way. And I think that's
have
important.
one element, too.
Yes, Mr. Cobb.
I would like to know what the charges are of the persons who will be supplying service.
Very good. Ms. Schenk.
Well, where to begin? I sense an element of chastisement in your initial remarks, so I will address those. Well before you came on this board, yes, there are responsibilities of the board members, obviously. It goes without saying. But there's a responsibility on the behalf of the staff as well, and the staff well knows that at least the longer-serving members of this board have a level of interest in knowing how they came to their decision. We have had others recommended by staff appear before us, so that would not be a new precedent for this board or for this staff. There are, I understand, Jeff, to have said that the company they recommend got a 91 and the other company got a 90, whoever they were. That's awfully close within the margin of error of subjectivity, so it is not at all untoward for the staff to have come forward and said, we have these top two, and here are our recommendations, here is why, and doing a deep dive. I mean, we are a public entity, going into such things as how long the companies have been in existence, who are their key clients, what is their source of their revenue, are they just a PR firm, are they a consulting firm, are they a political firm, their geographic scope, are they just here in Sacramento, or are they across the nation, their relevant experience, and frankly their formal and informal, professional and other relationship with members of the selection team. So those are just a few questions that should have been addressed, and that's, I think, what Richard might have been getting to. So I, for one, would appreciate that we slow this down. We're not in that much of a hurry. I have been talking about this issue for 2 years. Another month or two isn't going to make all that much difference. We do have competent staff and a consultant who can help us with the business plan.
Mr. Dearden, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I associate myself with the comments that Quentin and Lynn have offered. I also would like to remark on Richard's concern about having deliverables. Now, deliverables on a contract for a public relations firm is certainly different than an engineering firm. But we ought to have some basic objectives established in that list that we can look at and comment on. The final remark in preparation for next week or next month would be how, originally we put out this contract because we had a contracting difficulty between the supervision of the state-level public relations firm and the individual public relations firms working for the different corridors, which was where the big problem was. That inability to communicate and control there was where the problem was. I don't see that going away here. We still have the individual consulting firms, outreach firms, working for the individual corridors, not controlled by the state organization. And maybe you can respond to that. I was told not to ask you that question last month because you were just on the job, but I'm asking it now, and I don't expect you to answer it now, but answer it next month as it relates to this contract and it relates to your job.
Of course.
Yes, Mr. Morshin.
Mr. Chairman, let me try to respond to most of the comments you made and by the board members. And obviously, it appears that the board is prepared to move with the staff's recommendation. You want additional work done in this area before you decide. And we would like to obviously proceed to accommodate the wishes expressed here and do it in as responsible way as we can. What I have now, what I need to do is, and I'd like you to allow us to do, is that we need to go back and look at the process, because the RFP process is fairly rigid and prescribed. We put in a request for proposal. We describe the scope of work. We describe the scoring criteria. We describe what how they're going to be evaluated and how we're going to make the selection. And those things went out. And based on your comments, many of the things that you wanted to see and it should be addressed in those, it was not part of the scope of the work. So the selection that this team made and with the group that were made was based on one scope of work and one type of a thing. Now, in order for us, I don't believe we can go back and ask just the one entity or two entity to resubmit and give us additional information without violating the RFP process. So we have to, it has to be in terms of competition, it has to be a level playing field. And if we're going to be asking this one entity to give us more specific information and not having asked the other entity to provide it, then we run into a protest. So the other thing is that you expressed desire for the board to be able to hear and comment on individual one or two or three applicants. To my knowledge, and we will research that and then provide you with information, the state's RFP contract does not allow that to occur. Now, I want to research that, and I want to have our attorneys look at it and have the DGS look at it, because the interview process, it's my understanding is it's a closed door, closed session process. The board meetings are open meetings. You cannot have an entity come in an open meeting and lay out their plans, which is particular to them, in a public meeting. That's my understanding. We will verify that and we'll bring it up. What I'm trying to say here is that based on everything you've discussed today, my suggestion is that we go back that we resubmit the RFP. We put the additional provision that you said you want to have in terms of who they are and what they are, and there were many, many specifics that board members expressed here that I hope somebody took a note, and if you didn't, we will pick it up on the recording. We will have to include those in the process so all the potential applicants will know what they're going to be up against and how they're going to be evaluated, and then bring that to you with the new process. The suggestion that we bring back the next 2 or 3 back here for you to evaluate, I don't think that's going to give us any additional information, and it's not going to be that much more helpful to you. Yes, we can write a better report, but it may not include all the things that you have indicated you want.
Well, but it would be more helpful. I think part of it is to have the board hear directly what the proposals are and what that scope is and what that presentation is. I'd like to hear your point of view, Mr. Kopp, but I'm just struggling with the discussion to expedite it as quickly as you originally proposed, Mr. Morshed, and now to start all over. I just feel we do hang in limbo for multiple months under that theory. Hearing from the top 2 or 3, however the scoring determined, and hearing a presentation before the board, you also suggested that may not be proper in terms of the RFP process. If that's not legal, then we won't do it. But if it is, then we should hear from those top 2 or 3 firms and hear that level of presentation and make that decision, understanding where the staff's recommendation is, but we would be able to as a board, make that decision. And if we can, then that would be fine.
Point of information, if I may, Mr. Chairman. The RFP specifically, as I said before, requires references. It requires information concerning prior subcontracts. That must be available, is it not?
We received that from each of the applicants.
All right, so that ought to be provided to us together with anything else that's been received without reopening the RFP process. And you get the legal opinion from the Attorney General as to whether we can interview these top 3 firms.
Or at least hear a presentation. At least hear a presentation.
Yeah.
Yes, Ms. Shank.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit incredulous. I mean, the law does not expect us to be merely a rubber stamp for a yes or a no on the staff recommendation. The staff is not the authority, and they're hugely important. I have the greatest respect for the staff, but the vote is mine.
Generally good looking, too. I mean,
yes, but the vote is mine. And I want to make this really clear going forward, that when I am asked to vote, I want full information. And that includes looking at potential consultants in the eye, being able to ask them questions, hear their presentation. I do not expect my vote to be a rubber stamp one way or another. So anyway, I think
very good. So is there any objection to continuing this item to September 23rd?
Yes.
I'll move.
To October 1st, please, because I will not be.
No, I was just wondering if you were going to look him in the eye.
Well, she's got to wait till October 1st.
All right. And to ensure that we maximize Ms. Schenk's participation as well, without objection, I'd like to continue this item to October 1st.
Thank you.
That brings us to item 10. Mr. Morshed.
Mr. Chairman, that's just a simple item for the entering into a MOU with Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority. As I've been reporting to you on numerous occasions, we've been working very cooperatively with them. We are very, very happy that the new management at the LA MTA is willing and participating with us in this, and they've been generous to provide a considerable amount of staff time and staff support to help us with this project. So this memorandum would be a formal step in that direction, and so I would ask you to approve.
I move the recommended action.
The resolution.
Very good.
I have one question.
Yes,
about
there's a motion by Mr. Dearden, second by Ms. Schenk for discussion. Mr. Kopp.
To Mr. Spanos, Clause 12, the last sentence, I have not remembered. Is that consistent with what we have included in prior MOUs with Sacramento, the Caltrain, Joint Powers Authority?
I'm sorry. Well, Mr. Chairman,
that is in all those contracts.
Mr. Chairman, rather than, instead of having George answer that, because that's, I think, more of a policy issue than legal issue, is that this MOU has considerably more detail in it than the ones we have had with
So that's a new sentence.
There's not only that, but there's a considerable amount of more detailed information and detail.
All I'm concerned with is this sentence, which is good.
I'm sorry.
And you didn't have it in any other contract.
Well, I'm trying to find it. Which paragraph?
Page 3,
I think we resolved
Clause
the,
12.
it's okay. We resolved the issue. Thank you, George, for your time. Any other comments on this? There's a motion second before us on item 10. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. It does bring us to the beginning of our agenda.
Need to.
Item 3 is approval of our July and August minutes.
I move the minutes. They be entered separately in the record.
Okay, I'll do that in a moment. Very good. There's a motion on item 3 on both approval of the July and August minutes. Is there a second by Mr. Kopp? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Are there any reports from members of the authority?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
there are
Dearden.
several national high-speed rail activities occurring between now and the end of October. Rather than take the time to go through them now, I'll send them out to you by email.
Very good. Thank you very much. Any other reports? Mr. Kopp.
2 items. Because of time, I won't recite a memorandum that has been distributed to all members that I wrote after analyzing the 22-page decision. In the case of Town of Atherton and others versus the California High-Speed Rail Authority and the Sacramento County Superior Court, it is a public record and it's available to all interested parties. And yes, not at all. And I hope it dispels the media and other myths about the court statement of decision. I identified, and with Ms. Sproul's help, identified about 17 or 18 issues that were what is called triable issues. And on 15 of those, the court held that the California High-Speed Rail Authority had complied with legal sufficiency as to all requirements of the California Environmental Quality Act, and on 2 it had not, and 1 was because there was an internal inconsistency in the program EIR, and the other dealt with reliance upon a 36-mile stretch between San Jose and Gilroy of this almost 500-mile first phase, which relied on UP right-of-way, and I am informed by the executive director that the reanalysis of that stretch already has begun, correct? Began before the statement of decision. And the upshot is that ruling is not going to retard this project, which Californians want, one bit.
Thank you, Mr. Kopp, for that member's report. Any other members wish to offer a report? Mr. Morshed under Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We started, at your request, a weekly Executive Director's report that one of the new assignments that Jeff has taken on was develop that format, and we are providing that information to you, so it makes it a lot easier for me at the monthly meeting that I don't have to repeat those. And if you, I hope you find it useful, and if you have any suggestions, let us know. I also want to let you know that just in case you make some phone calls and you run into some issues with us, is that once again, I'm without the secretary, and we're in this area, we're challenged about having adequate office by staff. So we'll try to remedy that, but my assistant, Ms. Taylor, decided to return back to her previous agency. Last week, we had a meeting with the German Consul General and delegation from Germany that the chairman, you weren't able to participate, but Judge Kopp participated and signed on the behalf of the authority, and we visited the Siemens factory afterward. Following that, I've received a letter from German Consul General inviting some of the board members and some legislators to visit Germany and their system before the end of this year. And I'll give you a copy of what I received, and then we will try to come up with a date and some suggestion how to go about that for the next board meeting. Let's see, what I'm trying to make this as short as I can, so I think that's probably, we have an Italian Consul General was going to come today with a copy of the MOU for us to sign, I believe. Okay, they're here, so the chairman will sign that as soon as we take a recess. And one other thing I want to say is a general comment. And that is, there's been a great deal of, it is a great deal of anxiety sometimes on the part of people in various areas about either the ARRA deadline or our environmental document deadline, that because of those deadlines, some major decisions are going to be made and they're going to be left out. And I want to make sure everybody understands that we are, obviously we have deadlines we would like to meet, but our objective is to get the work done and be as responsive as we can to the needs of the community. So if the deadline needs to be adjusted to the extent that we can, we will. We can't adjust the federal deadlines for submission of funds, but the deadlines that are within our capability, if we need to change those, we will in order to facilitate reaching a consensus. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I conclude my remarks. Thank you.
Very good. A few wrap-up items. I did receive a note just recently from Dylan Gibbons, who wished to be heard at some time. Dylan, we've gone past item 8. We've gone past the public comment time. We're about ready to move into closed session. Did you wish to speak on behalf of Assemblywoman Conway? Sure, whatever you wish to do. Mr. Gibbons is from Assemblywoman Connie Conway's office.
Thank you. I'll keep this real brief since I know you've already heard most of these comments, and we've passed that time. Assemblywoman Conway represents the portions of the Central Valley, Tulare County, Kern County, San Bernardino, and Inyo. And I just wanted to encourage the board to fund the Bakersfield to Merced corridor at the maximum level expressed in the staff report at $2.5 billion. The rest of the information that I was going to say has already been said, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. I would also like
One question.
Yes.
Is she John Conway's daughter?
Yes, she is.
Thank you.
Oh, jeez. I'd like to acknowledge our friend, High-Speed Rail's friend, the Assemblywoman from the northern portion of the San Joaquin Valley, Assemblywoman Galgiani. Glad you are here.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working with you. We're going back to Washington, D.C. on September 13th to lobby for California's application, and I'm really excited about the recommendations that have been made by the board, and I'm very happy that the recommendations include the segment from Merced to Bakersfield and Bakersfield to Fresno as well. So thank you very much, and I'll look forward to continuing to work with you.
Thank you. I also understand a representative from Senator Denham's office is here. It's lovely. So we're going to work on this in the future. Just we'll have public comment at the beginning of the meeting, and we know that you want to read into record a comment from the very important senator who we all like.
We did send a letter yesterday when we requested that it be read in the earlier part, but just
you.
real brief, we are
Yes,
also
ma'am.
asking to be sure that the $2.5 billion are there for the funding of the Bakersfield to Merced corridor, as well as funding for the former Castle Air Force Base maintenance hub. And that's
Thank you very much for your comments. This fine lady represents Senator Jeff Denham's office. Wish to have that read into the record. And finally, we are about ready to recess into closed session, but I want to introduce Consul General from Italy, Mr. Marcelli. So thank you very much for being here, sir. And we are going to take a recess for a half hour into closed session and have lunch, but I want to be able to have the authority members greet you. So if you'd step forward so we can say hello. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I bring copies of the treaty we have negotiated since December with the assistance of the Office of the General Attorney of California. So we are finally ready to sign this agreement, cooperation agreement, as other countries have done before us. And of course, we are looking forward to assist the authority technically. I'm confident that the Italian railway system has the experience and similarities with the geological and seismic terrain in California, so I think we can contribute to your endeavor. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, sir. And I will greet you right down here in a moment as we now will stand in recess for a half hour. I ask members of the public who wish to hear the presentation on the finance issues of the authority. We will start that. How about if we do that starting no later than 1:10? We stand in recess for that purpose, and I will further note that Commissioner Umberg, we will depart at this time as we can't keep you connected through the closed session.
Right, Tom.